everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact video series. My name is Ryan Duffy, and I'm the Director of the Museum. And this week, in honor of Veterans Day, we are going to discuss one of Batavia and Genesee County's most well-known veterans, and that is Edward Cichowski York. Now, Edward Cichowski, as he was known as a child, was born on August 16, 1912, to Mr. and Mrs. Ignatius Cichowski of Harvester Avenue here in Batavia. Now, his father, Ignatius, was actually a newly arrived immigrant from Poland, arriving about 5 years before Edward was born. Now, Edward was actually a very smart child and actually graduated from Batavia High School at the age of 15 in 1928. And he was a very good student and excelled specifically in mathematics, which would go on to do him very well in his military career. After graduating from high school, he went on to serve in the military, specifically the Army, for 3 years, and then was accepted into West Point, which was very rare for an enlisted man to be accepted into West Point. And there he graduated from West Point, and by 1938 he was a first lieutenant in the Army. He soon shifted his gears into the aviation field, joining the Army Air Force, and became a pilot, and flew several different types of warplanes, and moved around being based even in Alaska and Washington and Oregon. He learned how to fly various aircraft, though it would be at the beginning of World War II that he would sort of make his claim to fame. Now, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, the United States was looking for a way to combat the Japanese and strike back. The plan to strike back at Japan came from Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, and this would be known as the Doolittle Raid. Now, the Doolittle Raid was a top-secret operation all the way through, and many of the pilots who were brought on did not even know what the eventual target was. Now, the Doolittle Raid's purpose was to take medium bombers, specifically B-25 Mitchell planes, on an aircraft carrier and strike at Tokyo, which was thought as nearly impossible at the time, and would cause, if successful, a major morale boost to the United States, and would also deter the Japanese and strike them at a part where they did not feel they were vulnerable. So this plan was concocted throughout the very beginning of 1942, and Edward York, as he became known, was one of the pilots enlisted to carry out this secret raid. York was selected to participate in February, and by April 18th, the plan was ready and put into action. So a large group of B-25 bombers took off from the USS Hornet aircraft carrier on their way to Tokyo to bomb the Japanese capital. They were able to bomb the capital. However, many of the planes were not able to make the complete journey, and several crashed or had to land in China, which was the plan for Edward York's plane, which was the 8th to take off from the aircraft carrier. However, they ran out of fuel rather quickly, quicker than they expected, and they actually turned north and landed in neutral Russia at the time, as Russia was not at war with Japan yet. So they landed in Russia, but were held prisoner there for 13 months and were moved around to various Russian prisons until in 1943 they were moved near the border with modern-day Iran, and they were able to concoct a scheme to escape using British agents and Afghanistan traders, and were able to cross into Persia, where they were able to meet up with British consulates and make their way to India and then back to the United States. So the whole ordeal was much longer than they expected, and was well over a year between the Doolittle Raid and them actually making it back to the United States. Now, once York made his way back to the United States, he was put back in Bomber Command and was eventually shipped off to Italy, where he operated a B-17 and ran several flights in that theater of the war. After the end of World War II, York was put into a more diplomatic position and was actually the air attaché to Poland in 1945 and 46, and then Denmark in 1950. After that, he was brought home and worked in various levels of the Air Force in training and command, working even at the Pentagon, and eventually making his way down in San Antonio, Texas, where he was in charge of the base down there. But he was involved at many different levels of the Air Force and was highly regarded throughout his time. He eventually reaches the rank of colonel by the time of his retirement in 1968. So Edward York actually passes away in 1984 at the age of 72 in San Antonio, where he would eventually stay after being stationed there. Now, if going sort of into pop culture, there was a film released in 1944 called 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, which is a dramatization of the Doolittle Raider. And Edward York is one of those characters that is portrayed. He's actually portrayed by an actor named Paul Langton. So he is actually one of the listed characters. He was listed as Edward Ski York, as apparently he was often called by his airmates Ski in reference to his Polish name. And there's often been questions on where the term York came from. Some of it thinks it was because his last name was maybe just too hard to say and he was from New York, so it went with York, but we really don't know why he went with the name York. But it's what he became known as and what we know him as today. So Edward Cichowski York, one of the Doolittle Raiders from right here in Batavia. So I hope you enjoyed this edition of our Artifact video series. If you've missed any of our previous ones, as we've been doing these once a week, please go back and check them out. You can see them all on our YouTube channel, Holland Land Office Museum. We actually got a whole playlist there, so you can run through them if you're really that adventurous. And we're going to keep doing these going in the future, so stick around and enjoy them as we come out with them.